Great to be here. Thanks for having me. So we're going to start back. I know maybe some of you were here last week. I don't know who was here last week, but Dave told me you were looking from verse 35, but we're going to start back there. And he said he helped through a picture of a seed. Sounds like a sunflower seed. You saw that different bodies are good for different things, and our future bodies will be fit for living with God forever. I hope that's something like you heard last week, and don't worry if you weren't there, because we're going to go back over it. So we're going to start back at verse 35. But first, I just thought it'd be good to start thinking about our bodies, because it's funny, we live in an age that is kind of obsessed with our bodies, but also I'd say probably pretty confused about our bodies as well. So shameless plug, but maybe you've listened to the Table Talk episode on looks maxing. Don't worry if you haven't. But looks maxing is kind of TikTok language for basically extreme optimization of your facial structure potentially and your body in quite invasive ways sometimes. And I say don't worry if you're used to that language or not, but the pressure is everywhere, and especially in this kind of part of London. And yeah, you could say, okay, it's fueled by social media, or just that we're quite wealthy. And so we kind of, I don't know, we've got to the point where we can tinker with our bodies in ways which maybe previous generations or other parts of the world can't. And we expect them now to almost carry our identity. Like we look to our bodies to help us with who we are, tell us who we are, to give us beauty and confidence and control and meaning. And so we kind of measure them, and we compare them, we photograph them, we try and optimize them. And I'd say it's not just beauty. It's not, guys do this, but we're more often, sometimes about beauty and vanity, but often about performance. So we're like tracking every metric that we can: steps, sleep, calories, protein intake, heart rate zones, recovery. And we're doing that as if we're like elite athletes. You only have to go to Richmond Park to kind of see that, and no judgment if you're into your cycling. But lots of that can be really good. I'm not saying it's bad, and it's really good to care for our bodies that God has given to us. Do exercise, be healthy. But it is easy, isn't it, to place too much emphasis of our identity on our bodies, and then our bodies kind of naturally then disappoint us. We ask them too much, and then we kind of despise our bodies then when they fail us. And maybe that's where some of the confusion creeps in. And then maybe there's some in the room, some Christians, and probably I'm like this sometimes as well, then almost look down on all of that I've just said. They're like, oh, like we're more spiritual and kind of superior to all of that, like as if going to the gym or, getting Invisalign and straightening your teeth, like, no, that's all very materialistic and beneath me. But I don't think that's quite right either. And we'll see that from this passage. Like Paul's not going to say our bodies don't matter at all. Yes, they're weak now, but they're not worthless. They're just not finished. And, God's not just going to throw our bodies in the bin. So anyway, they're destined for resurrection, as we heard last week. And this morning, it's really simple. The question is, what will happen to our bodies? And we're going to look at that together. And hopefully that will help us. As a coffee time question at the end. Hopefully that will generate some discussion as well for you guys. Before we go any further, let me pray. We need God's help, because as we've already said, we're probably all a bit confused on this subject. So let me pray, and then we'll go and look at 1 Corinthians 15. Oh, Father, please help us as we come to your word now. This is a tricky topic, and we just confess that probably the world around us has shaped or confused our thinking more than we realise. So where we feel superior or we need humbling, please humbling us. Where we need to see our bodies as you see them, please help us with that. Help us understand what they are now and what they will be in the future. In Jesus' name, amen. Right, let's get going. So if you look down with me at verse 35, Paul says, but some will ask, how are the dead raised? What kind of bodies will they come? And the idea here, because you see the next bit in Paul's response is quite sharp. I don't know if you saw that. It's like, how foolish. And you're like, whoa, why is Paul coming down so hard on this question? And I think I didn't do a very good job of it, but it's supposed to be kind of a cynical, slightly sarcastic question that they're asking in Corinth. They were basically saying, like, how could this be possible that, like, God kind of stitches together a dead body and raises it? And anyway, what kind of body would that be? I mean, this is ridiculous. And they were the issue is in Corinth they were kind of denying the resurrection altogether. So that's what Paul's facing into. And here, maybe that's us. Maybe you're sat here, you're not a Christian, you're pretty cynical of the idea of resurrection, in which case, great, let's listen to Paul's answer. Maybe that's not you. Maybe you're not really cynical sat here, but this could be really painful for you sat here. So it's more approaching this from, what about illness? What about disability? What about tiredness and death and just our bodies just, falling apart? And then that question becomes really real. It's not just a kind of abstract argument to be won. It's a hope. It's a hope that we need. So Paul's answer for both the Corinthians and us, wherever we're coming from, is this, that, as I said, God doesn't throw our bodies away. He raises them to something more glorious than we can imagine. So if you're following along on the sheet and the outline, the first point from his answer is still seeds, so wait patiently. Still seeds, so wait patiently. And if we pick back up from verse 36, just after, how foolish, what you sow does not come to life until it dies. When you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, just as a seed, perhaps wheat or something else. So as you were thinking about last week, Paul's first picture to try and explain the sort of body we'll have is a seed. Maybe a farmer bearing a seed in the ground, and it looks small, doesn't it? Seeds just look rubbish. They're just weak. They're just tiny, unimpressive. But Paul's saying what comes up is totally different. Now, I've got a seed here. I know, oh gosh, I've dropped it already. See? Rubbish. I know you had a seed last week, but does anyone know what this seed is? It's not a sunflower. It's better. I think I went better than a sunflower. It looks like a peanut, doesn't it? But it's not. Do you know, this is a palm tree. Because I went to Gran Canaria last month, and I thought I'd bring the kids back a palm tree. So we're going to bury it in the garden. And palm trees I just think palm trees are amazing, aren't they? I mean, they just are cool trees. You're just like, cool. I don't know whether that's because you go on holiday and you see them, you're like, wow, that looks... But they do grow in quite, I don't know, really tall and magnificent ways. Strong, beautiful. So the idea is that, yes, the palm tree is connected to this seed. And, by looking at this, you'd never guess, would you? You literally would. You didn't guess that, it's like, no, it's not a peanut. So that's the whole point that Paul's making, and it shows two things, though, quite cleverly that Paul does, I think. It shows continuity and transformation. So go back to verse 38. It says, but God gives it a body as he's determined, and to each kind of seed, he gives it its own body. So it's God that gives the body. Did you notice that? The farmer, fine, is putting a seed in, but it's God who gives the body. So the resurrection is not about us trying to imagine on earth how we'll kind of reconstruct a dead body. Paul's like, that's not the exercise. It's about trusting God who gives bodies. And he goes on in verse 39 to say, look, guys, you know this. Not all flesh, like not all bodies are the same. People have one kind of flesh, one kind of body, animals another, birds another, fish another. And there's also heavenly bodies and earthly bodies. So he goes on even further, and he's like, and the splendor of heavenly bodies is one kind, and the splendor of earthly bodies is another. The sun has one kind of splendor, and the moon another, and stars another, and stars different from star in splendor. And so Paul here, he kind of widens the lens beyond even bodies, and he moves the whole created world. And the point is, God is very, very good at giving the right kind of body for the right kind of life. So fish have bodies for water, birds have bodies fit for the air, and the sun and moon and stars, and their splendor is just right for where they are in the solar system in the created order. And so we can trust God that he will give the right sort of splendor and the right sort of bodies to our resurrected bodies. But just like we can't really imagine what this will become, it's pretty hard for us to imagine a palm tree out of this seed. C.S. Lewis, absolute master, isn't he, of explaining this sort of stuff. So I thought it's a slightly adapted paraphrase, I have to be honest, but it is all C.S. Lewis, but I've slightly crunched two quotes together. So I was just going to read this because I think it's helpful. It should come up on the screen. Here we go. Remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you speak to may one day become someone so glorious that if you saw them now, you'd be strongly tempted to worship them. God will make even the weakest and most broken of us dazzling, radiant, and immortal, full of energy, joy, wisdom, and love beyond anything we can now imagine. That's the kind of future that Paul wants us to feel. Not just that we'll survive death as a Christian or get to the other side if you're trusting Jesus, go somewhere nice, but our weak bodies will be raised in splendor, wonderfully fitted for our new lives with God. And he goes on now in verse 32 to kind of draw out the two comparisons. So if you look down with me, we'll read that. So verse 32, so it will be with the resurrection of the dead. The body that is sown is perishable. It is raised imperishable. It's sown in dishonor. It's raised in glory. It's sown in weakness. It's raised in power. It's sown in a natural body and it's raised in a spiritual bodies. So again, he's trying to explain there is continuity here. It's the same seed. He keeps on saying sown, you can see sown, raised, sown, raised. So there is connection to each of them. It's the same body. And he's not saying it's just discarded, like one's thrown on the rubbish heap and then you get this new one. He's like, no, sown, raised. But there's also transformation each time. Did you see? So what's perishable now becomes imperishable. What's dishonored will be glory. What's weakness will be power. What's natural will be spiritual. And just a point of clarification on the spiritual body here. Check this with Dave as well. This doesn't mean this is non-physical when he says spiritual or kind of ghostly, ethereal. It's more just that it's made alive and fitted by the Spirit. It's a bit like putting a V8 really powerful engine into a car. It's just what gives it its life will be supercharged. So think of that in, you probably don't like cars, but think of that in terms of it's spirit powered. Anyway, more alive. So as you were taught last week, this body will be fit for life with God forever. And I thought, let's just stop and apply that now and go a bit deeper. So what are we meant to think about our bodies now in light of what Paul's just told us? So point one is we're still seeds, so wait patiently, I've said, because we're not yet the plant. We're not yet this glorious palm tree. We haven't been raised to splendor. And our bodies are weak now. They do get tired. They get ill. They age. They fail us. And they need rest. And if you're a follower of Jesus here and you feel all of that and you feel like, sometimes I feel like a bad Christian because of that, just because I'm tired and I don't have the capacity that I want to, and I just don't have the mobility that I need, and I want to serve Jesus, but I can't. when you feel those things, you're not a less faithful Christian. You're not less of a Christian. God knows your weakness. He knows we're still seeds. And he will be the one who will raise us in splendor. So I think it also helps us, for those sat here and we're tempted to kind of idolize our bodies, optimize them, looks max them. And it says, that says, optimize your perfect body, make it glorious now. And Paul wants to say, no, be patient. Be patient. Our bodies are not yet at maximum splendor. That is God's job. God will do that. He will looks max. So we don't need to try and spend our lives turning these bodies into our resurrection bodies before the resurrection. And like I said before, it's great to stay healthy and look after the bodies that God has given us. But only God can make them glorious. So care for your bodies, but don't worship them, I think is what Paul's saying. And perhaps if you're sat here and you're like, well, I'm not even sure if I'm really a follower of Jesus or a Christian, great to have you. And I hope this might help make sense of some of your feelings as well. Like maybe, you're like, do you know what, Jack? I am tired of trying to transform myself into a palm tree. Because it is, isn't it? It's like, there's a van that goes around our streets in Fulham, the Botox van, where it's like, right, pop in, another 300 quid, quick, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's relentless, this stuff. And if you're tired of trying to make your body glorious enough, attractive enough, strong enough, impressive enough, and you're tired of that being your identity and trying to carry your identity, then that longing for glory is not wrong. Like, we want to long for these glorious bodies. The feeling and the longing is not wrong. But maybe the problem is we're asking these bodies that are really seeds too much right now. And that's actually only something that God can do to us. So your body's valuable and it's brilliant, but it's not ultimate yet. And only God can give that sort of security and longing that we're after. So that's the difference. If you're sat here and you're like, well, what does Jesus offer? He doesn't offer self-improvement. He offers you resurrection. So just fully transformed bodies like palm trees. So I hope you find that attractive. We can speak more after the service. But for now, let's just summarize. We have to accept our weakness now, and knowing that splendor's coming. And so God doesn't want us to throw our bodies away, nor should we. But what's raised in weakness what's sown in weakness will be raised in splendor. That's our first point. Let's look on. I know you're like, well, we're only just where we got to last week, but I will go a bit quicker for our second point, which is, if you look on the handout, made like Christ, so hope confidently. Made like Christ, so hope confidently. So Paul now moves from the seed picture to speaking about Adam and Christ, Adam and Jesus. And if point one answered the question, like, what kind of body will we have? The answer, a transformed body, sown in weakness, raised in splendor. Then point two answers a slightly different question, like, who will we be like? Who will we be like? What's the pattern of our future bodies? And Paul's answer, quite simply, is we'll be like the risen Jesus. He's the prototype. And Paul uses the language, we'll look at it in a second, we will bear the image of the heavenly man. That's this kind of we will be like Jesus language that he's using. So let's have a look at it together. So we're now down at verse 45. So it's written, the first man, Adam, became a living being, the last Adam, a life-giving spirit. The spiritual did not come first, but the natural, and after that, the spiritual. The first man was of dust of the earth. The second is of heaven. As it was with the earthly man, so are those who are of the earth. And as it is with the heavenly man, so are those of heaven. And just as we've been born of the image of the earthly man, so we'll bear the image of the heavenly man. So I don't know if you saw that. Paul's setting up here two humanities. So on the one side, I'll try and do it the right way around. Yeah, Adam on this side. So he's the first man from dust, earthly, a living being, natural, mortal. And then on the other side, we've got Jesus. He's also called the last Adam, but he's powered by this life-giving spirit, risen, glorious, immortal. And Paul says that our present reality is that we're actually bearing the image. We're like the man of dust. We're like Adam. That's us now. We're Adam people. We're just dust people. And that's why, as we've been speaking about, we feel in our bodies weakness. We feel the limits of them, tiredness, illness, shame, sin, death. They're all things that came about being part of made like Adam. And he's almost like the V1 prototype and the Mark 1. And we're just still marked by Adam's fragility. We're living before the resurrection. As a side point, for those who are following Jesus now, what's interesting is that we're already being renewed into Jesus' likeness. I'm sure you've heard that sort of language by Paul and in other parts of the Bible. And he's already started to change us now. But what's interesting is it always speaks about that in terms of our character. So we're being transformed in the renewing of our minds and our desires and our hearts to become like more loving or more patient, forgiving, more like him. Or he sometimes used like fruits of the Spirit as one way of describing that. And that is real change now. That does happen, but it's not yet complete. But this is different, what Paul's talking about here. His emphasis is not kind of our characters and what we're like now. It's talking about the future and our bodies. He's mainly thinking about our bodies. So he's saying something even more astonishing, really. I mean, both are astonishing, but that not only our character, but our actual bodies will be more like the pattern we see in the risen Jesus. It says our bodies will bear the image of the heavenly man. That's Jesus. And so I wonder, I don't want to push this too far, but that we get a glimpse of it when we read about Jesus's risen body in the Gospels. So you could go back and kind of have a look at some of those passages. But whenever you read about the risen Jesus, he was truly bodily. So he wasn't a ghost. He could be seen. He was touched. He was, I don't know if you remember this, but the disciples kind of recognized him but didn't. So there's that continuity but transformation. And then he had breakfast with his disciples. He ate with them. So, you know, his guts are all working. And yeah, he also bore the marks of the cross. So it's like, oh, wow. I don't know. Again, that might be just Jesus. But crucially, he's no longer subject to death either. So, and I find this really hard, but at the end of the Gospels, he is bodily ascended into heaven. And he can walk through walls as well. So it's I know this sounds quite stretching, but Paul says that is the sort of pattern of our future that we can expect. And we'll be made like the risen Jesus. Not that we like become exactly Jesus. He doesn't say that. We're bearing his image. But the point for us is it's not like there's a slight, I know we've already said this morning, but it's not like we're just slight improvement on ourselves. Or this is a vaguely kind of spiritual survival. Bodily resurrection will be like his pattern. And we'll bear his image as the heavenly man. Maybe this helps you think about it. I don't know. Let's see. But I'm going to show you a photo, if we can. Does anyone know who this toddler is? Can anyone get? Wow! You got it. How did you get that? Just the hair? Or the nose? The dress? Yeah, the dress was a bit of a giveaway. Okay, well, I didn't think anyone would get that. Okay, let's see if they're right. Yay. Brilliant. Amazing. Some royalists at... Now, you probably wouldn't immediately think, although some here would, oh yeah, that's definitely the future king of the United Kingdom. But amazingly, even as a toddler, his identity was already there. His future was there. He's the first in line to the throne. But the full reality was not yet No, and he was still in that silly dress and not in his full garb and didn't have all the power yet. And Paul's saying something far greater about us. By nature, we all have Adam's family likeness. So we're dust people. We're weak, we're frail, we're mortal. But if this morning here, if we belong to Jesus, if we're trusting him, that's not the final family likeness that we will bear. He's saying one day when God finishes his work after our resurrection, the likeness to Jesus will be unmistakable. Not just a few of us here will be like, oh yeah, that's Charles. It's like they will just clearly see that not just in our characters, but even in our bodies will be like Jesus is. So for anyone here despairing about the fragility of their body or maybe someone that you love. I mean, it was great that Polly prayed for Matteo, like a frail body. I hope for all of us, and it has done for me this week, give us confidence in the hope that we have. We can go back and see the evidence for Jesus' resurrection. This is something that we can concretely base our hope in, that our future is not just atoms of dust and death, but of Jesus' resurrection life. And we've got proof of that, of him. And so, like that photo, maybe right now, like the photo of Charles, we might not be able to see exactly that. And it does take faith, but it doesn't make it less true. We can have that confident hope. Right, let's just bring this together. Final kind of application. So our main question today is, what will happen to our bodies? And I think Paul's answer helps us with two temptations. So for those tempted, like me, to idolize our bodies, we remember they are still seeds. So feel free to look after that seed, to keep it healthy, to straighten its teeth, give it a little polish, whatever you want, keep it strong by working out. But remember that God, not us, will do the ultimate looks maxing. He will be what turns this from a seed into a glorious palm tree. So don't idolize a seed. That'd be a really weird thing to do standing next to a palm tree. It's just like obviously not meant to be more glorious than what we're going to be given. And then for those of us, and we're in that, we're kind of the command I think is just wait patiently, just be patient. And I know that's so hard because we get everything now, but just be patient. It won't be that long, and then we'll get our new glorious bodies. For those of us tempted to despair over our bodies, or like we were saying, over a body of someone we really love, remember these bodies do have a future. They might look so weak and frail and kind of useless, but they're not. They're still precious. No matter how weak and frail, every body that belongs to Jesus, it's infinitely precious because it will bear his image. And there's that continuity. They'll be like the man of heaven. So we live in these weak bodies now, but with patient, confident resurrection hope. Let's keep waiting until we get that glorious palm tree. I'm going to pause there. Is there a coffee question on your handout? I've forgotten what I said. Okay, great. Probably this will get read out later, but where do we need more patience with our bodies now and more hope for what they will become? That's a coffee time question. Thanks for listening. Let me pray and then we'll continue. Father, thank you so much for what we've heard from 1 Corinthians 15 this morning. Thank you so much that you're a God who is in the business of raising us from the dead bodily, giving us these more glorious, more splendid bodies that we can even imagine. And thank you for the evidence you've given already of that in Jesus, that we can look to as the pattern of that and pray that more and more we'll have patience as we wait for that, but also confidence in our hope as those that belong to Jesus. We will one day be like him, raised. And in the face of really tricky times sometimes, please would that be real to us and true in us. In Jesus' name, amen.